Hi, here you again. Is it, what is it?
After the lecture?
Well, it doesn't matter when it's a little bit wrong. I don't care. I mean, also for Belanda people, my name is difficult, especially the French part. You know, Gilles. This IJ stuff. Like to lie. Okay. No.
She made a dollar coin for me, so the style is really nice. It's a childish style.
Artistic,
right, it's very artistic.
Professional designer. Yeah, that's another.
And just like that, in 5 minutes.
Yeah, some people are like that. Okay. I should.
Halo teman-teman yang online. Sorry. Halo teman-teman yang online, nanti bertanya ya. Aku punya hadiah, tapi hadiahnya harus di pick up yourself. Mau nggak tak kasih hadiah buku tulisannya Profesor Quartarini Wahyu Yuniarti yang cantik jelita, The Queen of Ocean, Ratu The Balkis dan pelari maraton dunia.
Judulnya apa?
Pasti bukunya juga cantik jelita. Rak krungu jawabannya sapa kuwi sing jawab?
Judulnya apa, buku?
Oh, Bu Suprangi. Rakyat. Judulnya Psikopatologi Lintas Budaya.
Oh.
Ngik.
Otre.
So, panitianya siapa? How many people we are expecting coming for here offline? 79 offline, because we stopped those who wanted to come, okay, and they're not here. I would start, yeah. You will start right now, or what? You will wait about 5 minutes.
I will be advised by you. I mean, I have no idea how Indonesian school students, how they behave on Saturday morning at 9:15. I mean, maybe they have more interesting things to do, which I can imagine. I mean, yeah, it's a free weekend. But, So tell me what I should do. What would you do in my place?
We'll start in another 5 minutes.
Okay.
Okay, start in another 5 minutes, tapi namanya ditulis ndi mo, sing kon gawe jeneng. Ora ana respon ki piye? Oh, kertasnya baru diambil. Oke. Kalau kertasnya lagi diambil, siapa S1? Siapa S1 nih? Siapa S1?
No, it's not difficult. I mean, you're a psychologist, you know what assessment is. It's just, a few other instruments. That's it. But later on, I mean, if you talk about, let's say, see patients, then it becomes a little bit more complicated. But, the tools are not so. Maybe some of the tools you might know.
Kalian tahu nggak siapa yang akan datang offline? Pengumuman buku merah nih, karena yang daftar online 76 dan kita 79 dan kita stop orang untuk datang ke sini, dan ini orang yang nggak datang, besok tak surat tidak. Punya neuropsychological disorder. I told them that I am very angry because we had to stop people registering for offline. It's 79, and at the time not here, so. Teman-teman yang di online, kalau kalian berada di sekitar wilayah fakultas, datang aja ke sini. Sudah waktunya kita ngedrop teman-teman yang mau datang offline tapi sampai jam ini nggak datang. Oke. So yang berada di sekitar sini datang aja ya. Ben rame. We'll start, okay, Prof. Tes. Oke, selamat pagi teman-teman. Selamat pagi dan selamat datang di acara kuliah umum yang sangat istimewa ini. Perkenalkan, saya Syasha yang akan menjadi pembawa acara pada hari ini dan Bubo yang akan menjadi co-host untuk hari ini. Sebelum memulai acara ini, saya ingin mengucapkan terima kasih kepada para hadirin yang dengan semangat di hari Sabtu menghadiri acara ini baik secara offline maupun online. Kami sangat senang karena para hadirin dapat hadir di acara kuliah umum yang diselenggarakan oleh Prodi S3 bekerjasama dengan Prodi Magister Psikologi Universitas Gadjah Mada. Good morning and welcome to this very special public lecture event. I'm Sasha and with Bubo, and I will be your host for today's event. We are delighted that all of you could join us this morning, and this event is organized by the Doctoral Program Psychology in collaboration with Master's Program Psychology Universitas Gadjah Mada. Sebelum memulai acara, saya akan menjelaskan rangkaian acara pada hari ini. Yang pertama, kita akan mendengarkan sambutan dari Kaprodi S3, Mbak Yayi. Kemudian setelah itu pengenalan pembicara utama pada hari ini. Selanjutnya masuk ke acara utama yaitu paparan materi dari pembicara kita hari ini. Selanjutnya dilanjutkan oleh sesi tanya jawab dan terakhir penutup. Sebagai informasi bagi peserta yang hadir secara luring dapat mencatat pertanyaannya terlebih dahulu, kemudian akan dapat menanyakan pertanyaannya langsung ketika sesi tanya jawab berlangsung. Buat peserta yang online, silahkan teman-teman bisa mengirimkan chat via Zoom meeting dan selama acara berlangsung bisa mengirimkan pertanyaan dan nanti akan kami bacakan saat sesi Q&A. Before we start, I will explain today's agenda. We will hear a welcome message from the head of the doctoral program. Following that, we will introduce our keynote speaker. Next up is the moment we have waiting for, the keynote presentation. And after the presentation, we will open the Q&A session. And lastly, I will conclude this event with closing remarks. Baik, demikian rundown acara hari ini. Selanjutnya mari kita simak sambutan dari Kaprodi S3 Ibu Edilburga Wulan Saptandari kepada Mbak Yayi. Kami persilahkan.
Oke, selamat pagi teman-teman. Selamat pagi Prof. Gils, Bubo, dan juga teman-teman yang ada di online. So, good morning. Today is very special I think because if we talk about assessment, the future of assessment in psychology of course will be neuropsychological assessment. So, thank you so much Prof. Gils for your willingness to share with us about the neuropsychological assessment. Thank you for coming here, guys, and also for joining the Zoom meeting. So without further ado, I think it's very important for us to listen and learn a lot from Prof. Gils. Thank you, Mbak Sasa, saya kembali.
Terima kasih Mbak Yayi atas sambutannya. Oke, sebelum dimulai, mari kita mengenal pembicara utama kita pada hari ini. We will introduce our keynote speaker. Today we have the privilege to listen from someone who is expert in this field. Bubo? Oke, mengenalkan. Ya, oke. Bubo.
I thought I was going to be introduced first, right? So I was waiting. So my co-host, his name is Quartarini. Yes, so no, then it's directly to Prof. Sure. So, good morning, Prof.
It's great to have with you. So we are all here. How many people are we online? 250s, 232, and we are here about 32, so more or less 200 and I cannot count. Okay, so are you guys all right? I am very happy. It's always good to be a student. And I met Professor Gilles van Luitelaar. I always have a difficulty in pronouncing his name, but it's okay. So everybody has difficulties pronouncing this. His name is okay. This is what I've got from what I've known. That, correct me if I'm wrong, Professor. So Professor Gilles van Luitelaar is the Professor of Emeritus Biological Psychology from associated to Donors Center for Brain, Cognition and Behavior, Bu Supra, calling Bu Supra, and Radboud University, Nijmegen, the Netherlands. So the education's background, I put it into like that. Remember the disclaimer, Bu can always be wrong, right? Yeah, it's also here. Tilburg University, the Netherlands, and then Northern Illinois University, the USA, and then Nijmegen University, the Netherlands. And then his expertise is on psychopharmacology. It's probably more because the curriculum vitae is long-lasting, and I just try to make it very short. Biological psychology, neuropsychology, and cognition, brain, emotion, and EEG. I put the last is because I need those knowledge. Is an author and co-authors more than 300 scientific articles, can be more. So all are written in the list of publication of 33 pages, and more or less on sleep, brain, emotion, psychopharmacology, biological psychology, and neuropsychology, and probably something still missing here. Professor is very RCD and experimental bounded, so and very EEG. I'm smiling because my study is not as perfect as it's always fall into pitfalls. If I'm not mistaken again, he has been exposed to Indonesian since 2003 in Atmajaya University, Jakarta and Makassar, Unika and Maranatha. He is actually now associated also to Universitas Maranatha. Terima kasih Pak Yuspendi dan teman-teman yang memberikan izin untuk sharing beliau dengan kami yang ada di sini. And then yeah, I wrote it here already, okay? And there is also a grouped people engaged on neuropsychological test battery, if I'm not mistaken. And actually, I know these people from Professor Van Luitelaar. So it's not me knowing and then him, but we met, and then from him I know this Indonesian people, okay? So we can imagine neurological, biological, psychology, psychophysiology, and what? Psychopharmacology, and brain, and neuro, and something like that. It's something, even only mentioning, I got headache already. But yesterday, he had taught us already, mengajarkan kita, how to rehearse your brain as so that you'll get a healthy life, happy, and things are then easy and light in your life. You want to know how? Really? Okay, we'll see. That's what he taught us. Where is the? But if there is no voice, no noise, then we cannot hear it. It's not healthy yet. Wait. So that's the way the neurological.
Yeah. 5, 6, Có sáng dương ở trên mòn em Lắc vào 5, 5, 2, 2,
So the gamelan stimulation, you know, the concentration, the focus, it's all brain works. And now let me, is it to him right now? Okay, let me give this mic to Professor Shields van
I don't think I need this microphone. This one will work, right? So maybe switch it off. Thank you all for inviting me, and thank you for this strange introduction. I had never been introduced as a gamelan player, and that in the presence of a professional gamelan player, I feel very much embarrassed. Happily, I'm not a great musical talent, but maybe I know a little bit more about the subject I'm going to talk about. Well, I can say that you've seen briefly my curriculum vitae, and maybe I want to express once more that I'm always very happy to come to your beautiful country for many years, so not just once or twice or whatever. So I'm happy to have this long-term collaboration with Indonesian universities, and now this one which I'm attending now is new for me. Some others are quite familiar. We had in our home university quite a number of Indonesian PhD students, also from who graduated from Belanda universities and got their PhD, who are now working as staff members. Well, anyway, quite a number of contacts with Indonesia, and for me, teaching at Madjaya was not extremely rewarding because it was only teaching. And the last couple of years, in collaboration with mainly with people from Surya Pranata University and also a bit from Atmajaya Jakarta, we could start doing research, and I will share quite a bit with you guys what we were trying to develop. And in 4 words, it is neuropsychological assessment in Indonesia. Yeah. Good. Yeah. All right, go ahead. Okay. Yeah. Well, first of all, a kind of a disclaimer, right? What I feel is that it's our task and job to publish in open access journals. I do trust that you all know what it means by open access. It means that it's no longer limited for people who pay for a subscription. Open access means that all scholars in the whole world can see the results that we published and share our ideas. That's our aim of my collaboration with Indonesian people. Yeah? So the journal articles and later on also the database will be freely available upon request, and the data will be available upon request. Of course, we want to publish the analysis first, right? But then we can share, and there are many more possibilities to work on and to do research. Okay, the outline of my presentation is like this. Yeah? First, I will make you familiar with the difference between what a neurologist is doing and what a neuropsychologist is doing. I do believe, though, that they should collaborate, right? And it should not be a competition. But I try to mention the difference, what a neurologist is doing and what a neuropsychologist is doing. And then I will explain a little bit who are the clients, patients of a neuropsychologist. I try to explain why we do neuropsychological assessment, and I will say a little bit on how we do this. And the word assessment has been mentioned already a few times, also by Professor Bo and my host. You all know the importance of having normative data. You cannot do assessment without having normative data. I will introduce you to a couple of tests, and basically there are 10. And then I want to introduce you to 2 new tools that we are developing, or they are developed. And I will make you familiar with the current research that I mean Indonesian consortium of psychologists from a few Indonesian universities and me are doing. And then of course I will make some conclusions. Okay, the first topic is the difference between a neurological examination and a neuropsychologist. First of all, what is a neurologist doing in case people have a neurological disease or they have some complaints in which we suspect that the brain or the nervous system is involved? Then you go to a neurologist. And of course, also a neurologist is doing a anamnesis. He makes a record of your personal background and your disease history, very common. You get an impression of your family background. He will observe you during the interview. He will look at your behavior. He will see how you walk, how you sit, if you shake hands or greet otherwise, whether this is appropriate. He is asking some simple questions. Do you know where you are? Which day it is today? You get an impression a little bit about your mental, physical situation. And he might give you a few simple tests regarding your memory. Yeah? What did you eat yesterday? Or what is your birthday? So it's very simple questions. Yeah? And of course he's looking how you formulate things. Right? Is the way you speak, intonation, is that appropriate, giving your personal background, your family background, and things like that. Okay, so he gets an impression. And then he's doing a physical examination. And he's testing basically your nervous system. He's testing sensory systems, right? Yeah, some small look at vision, hearing, your motor system. Yeah? And especially a neurologist is interested in reflexes. Yeah? He's trying to get an idea about the inputs to our brain from how we collect information from our environment, and that goes through the cranial nerves. And the cranial nerves, they provide us information regarding smell, taste, visual fields, and acuity, how sharp we can see, the eye movements, the pupils, and the sensory functions of the face. He touches your face, he gives you, he feels your muscle strength. He's asking you, close your eyes and move your finger to the tip of your nose. It's a way to test the function of the cerebellum, right, the small brains. Yeah. Already mentioned muscle strength. And he gets an impression of the mental status and is asking you whether you have psychological or psychiatric problems, right? It is important to know. A neuropsychologist, yeah, he uses different type of tools. What he is doing is in a systematic way, he's trying to evaluate the brain-behavior relationships in a client, in a patient, by observation, of course also by amnesis, and by using neuropsychological diagnostic instruments. He's doing that because he wants to provide an indicator of brain functions and dysfunctions by searching for normal and pathological brain processes. You must be aware that nowadays we have quite a number of brain imaging studies, right? Yeah? So part of neuropsychological assessment could be, but it is not necessary, and I will explain you why later. Nowadays we can visualize many different brain structures with different instruments. An MRI, but we have two different types of MRIs, as you might know. An SMRI, which makes an anatomical picture, a structural picture of the brain, and the same is done by a CT scan. But you can also get an image or images of the brain at work. So that means that you try to see which parts of the brain are involved in certain functions, which parts of the brain are involved during memory test, which parts of the brain are involved when you speak. Right? In order to get an impression of brain activity when you're doing some tasks or rest, that's also fine with me. Yeah, we have, of course, electroencephalography. We have magnetic encephalography. We have functional MRI. We have PET scans. They can help in order to see whether we see strange things in the brain, but they are not decisive regarding what the brain is still able to do. We need functional neuropsychological tests in order to see what patients, clients, people are still able to do. These images in the brain, they don't show what patients can do or not. They just give an image or where or how much damage or whatever. But regarding what your patient or client can do, still after brain damage, after cerebrovascular accident, doesn't matter, or in case he has epileptic seizures or head trauma, you need to do neuropsychological assessment. And these imaging techniques are not necessary. The purpose of neuropsychological assessment, I already mentioned it a little bit brief, is to define the clients, and the clients could be healthy persons or people with diseases. It regards to define the specific cognitive strengths and weaknesses, and to identify the relationship between the neuropsychological findings and the client's medical and psychiatric condition. The tools that are available or that we should use, they should measure different aspects of cognition. And cognition is broad, and you can also, let's say, include to some extent intelligence and emotional state. And these measures of these different aspects of cognition, they have been standardized in a neurological normal sample, right? You can only do assessment if you know what the healthy population is doing, right? And then you can see, well, you have a client, and you can see whether there is a deviation between the client score and a healthy, normal population. The same as you're doing assessment for in clinical scales for, you know, anxiety or HDD or, I mean, that's basically not much different. And by doing this assessment in a systematic manner, according to the instructions of the manual, we get a pretty reliable evaluation of the client's condition by comparing him with the performance of a normative reference group. And I mentioned that clinical psychologists should collaborate with neurologists because they know about the type of brain disorders that might be present. This neuropsychological assessment is not only done for patients with brain damage. You can use these instruments also for healthy subjects. Healthy subjects can also be cognitive evaluated with neuropsychological tests, with cognitive tests, yeah, for school or job selection. Yeah. You did cognitive tests in order to enter university. Yeah. But also for recruitment, for the military, or for any type of job, for becoming a leader or become. Right? These tests could be helpful. These tests, which can be used for clients and for healthy people, they give the client, but also the client and the referral source, often a neurologist, it gives an understanding of the client's cognitive processes regarding different aspects of cognition, which are memory, language, executive functions, I will talk about that a little bit more, attention, motor skills, perception, anything you want. In addition, it can assist in the diagnosis and identification of difficulties in cognition that might be related to psychiatric conditions and motivation. Right? Also, psychiatric patients can be evaluated regarding their cognition and see which type of problems they encounter. A neuropsychological assessment is imperative, is necessary to document recovery of functions after brain lesions, after brain injury. And they cannot be missed in case you want to evaluate an intervention. Right? Intervention aimed at improving your cognition. Right? I mean, after a lesion in Broca's area, you go to a speech therapist. Right? And if you want to measure the efficacy of this speech therapy, you should do, you should do evaluations of the language functions, right? In order you're not sure whether this speech therapy has been a success. Which patients are candidates for neuropsychological assessment? Well, people with a known neurological disease, people with a cerebrovascular accident, people with a contusio cerebri, people with brain cancer, people with an infection of the dura, people with Korsakoff syndrome, alcoholics, right? People with epilepsy, people with Parkinson's disease, people with a risk factor for brain disorder, people who have dementia or early diagnosis of Alzheimer's disease, people with other types of dementia such as vascular dementia. If the quality of the blood vessels in your brain are not good anymore, or less good anymore, then your brain is not able to get enough fresh oxygen-rich blood. So then your brain doesn't function too well, and that deteriorates your cognitive abilities. Another form of dementia is frontotemporal dementia. People with whiplash, right? Whiplash occurs, for example, you're waiting for the traffic light and a car behind you hits your car. What happens then? You know, you sit behind the wheel or you're in the safety belt, but still, right? Your head goes like that. Sometimes you bump still against the steering wheel or against the front window or anything else. These people might have all types of complaints, and a cognitive evaluation might help to see whether the problems are quite serious or not. People with the so-called chronic fatigue syndrome. I'm so tired, right? Yeah? I cannot do anything. I don't have energy anymore, right? Yeah? I mean, I can make a funny story of that, but for some people it's really a problem, and then you can measure whether their cognition is still okay or not. And by even establishing that nothing is wrong with their cognitive abilities, they're happy to hear, right? It's a relief. Right? People with burnout, people with a head trauma, yeah? And these psychological tests can be used for recommendations for a specific type of treatment, or to structure work activity in case you have an attentional problem, right, after any of these accidents or whatever, right? Yeah? Then a neuropsychologist can say, well, I see that you have, let's say, some attentional problems, for example, that you cannot concentrate longer than whatever. Yeah? Maybe you should restructure your work. Maybe you should not try to be concentrated for 2 hours, but, you know, take a small rest after half an hour, yeah, do something else, and then again start. Yeah? This type of advices can be given by a neuropsychologist. Other type of clients for neuropsychologists could be people with psychiatric or neurodevelopmental disorders, yeah? And people with depression, yeah? With schizophrenia, obsessive compulsive disorder, people with autistic spectrum disorder, people with ADHD, with ADD, right? And there's a large group of people which are aging, right? And family says, well, you know, maybe grandfather, maybe grandmother is deteriorating, right? Is it serious or not, or right? Yeah? And you can evaluate, you know, also, let's say, healthy people to see whether their brain state is comparable to the data from a normative group. But also people with health problem. And then I'm not talking about specific brain diseases, but people with diabetes. The consequence of diabetes could be that not only your body, but also your brain is less well functioning. People with atherosclerosis, right? In case there is this, the blood vessels are from inside are covered with this stuff in which doesn't make the blood vessel so flexible anymore, or make or blocks to a certain extent the entry of fresh blood to your brain. People with HIV, people with post-COVID syndrome, right? They complain about cognitive disturbances. But people with organic brain damage, I mean people who work on Jakarta, in Jakarta on the streets, well, these traffic guys, the whole day they are exposed to, this exhaust fume from the cars. People who works in the field and they used fertilizers. People who work with organic solvents. People who do car painting. People who work with pesticides. These type of people can be evaluated cognitively. And we use neuropsychological tests for better understanding brain behavior relationship. So for scientific reasons, for our own curiosity. This is one of the things, I already mentioned it, but I would like to repeat it. Because many people ask me, is it still necessary in the days of when we have so many nice brain imaging techniques? Right? Is it still necessary to do neuropsychological assessment? And my answer is yes, of course. These brain imaging techniques only show maybe location of disturbances. They don't tell anything about the patient's cognitive status. You can suspect certain things. I mean, if my broca area is there's a big tumor, yeah, I can predict that the patient will have aphasia, yeah, for sure. But it happens an incredible amount of times that even if you go to the most expensive high-resolution scanners, that neurologists say and the radiologists say, very nice, clean picture, nothing wrong, I don't see anything particular. But the neuropsychologist could easily say, yes, your normative scores, your scores on this and this tests are less good than expected based on reference data. So at the most, yeah, you can say that imaging is complementary and qualitative. It's nice to have this information, but does not provide information regarding what the brain is still able to do. So if people say, oh, no, we have neurologists. Yeah? No, we need, and this should be your answer. Yeah? The neuropsychologist should use his tools, his professional tools. So, which factors are important in order to choose the appropriate tests? First of all, what is the research question? What do you want to know? In the case of healthy people, I mean, you're not just generally testing cognitive performance in general. I mean, maybe for job selection, you want to know some specific things. If you want to be a Navy officer, you know, the Navy knows which type of people, what type of cognitive skills they want. In case of a university entry exam, right, motor skills are not so important, right? You want to have you want to have students with not only whether they are intelligent, right, but you want to know whether they perhaps, in case for psychology, whether they have maybe some other skills which might be important for becoming a psychologist, right? So different faculties might find different aspects of cognition important. And in case you have patients, you want to know which type of brain area are mostly to be damaged. I mean, in case of whiplash, then it's well known that this part of the brain is damaged. But because of you do this, your brain moves into the skull. So this part is damaged, but later on you have also that the backside of your brain might be damaged. So based on the type of accident, based on the type of trauma, or where the brain was hit, or where the source of the epilepsy is, or in case you have a Parkinson patient, right, you know what type of motor skills you should evaluate, but next to that, the motor area is closely situated near the sensory areas or to your speech area. So based on the knowledge of your brain and of the type of disease, you have already some idea which type of tests should be evaluated. And then there is quite a number of so-called test batteries. And these test batteries cover quite a broad number of cognitive tests. I'll show you some examples. But it's not always necessary to use this whole large test battery, not only because it costs a lot of time, yeah, but also because of if you collect so much data about issues which are not relevant for this type of patient, or it's not related to the referral question, right? Then you collect unnecessary data. Yeah? On the other hand, this test battery might not test specifically enough all the things that you would like to know. So sometimes with a test battery you might miss important issues. Just as with any other type of assessment test, yeah, you would like to know what is the sensitivity of the test. Are high quality, recently collected normative data available, yes or no? And of course, the characteristics of the client or the patient are relevant. For entry exam, for the university, you might have used different tests than for an entry exam for being in the military. I hope I don't insult anybody with this remark. You should take into account, here you see the list, the characteristics of the individual are important. Yeah? You should know about which type of, what is the history of the patient, right? Head trauma, that he had brain surgery, that he had tumors in his brain. You should realize that not all patients are able to sit behind a computer screen, so maybe sometimes you should use paper and pencil tests. The age, experience, culture, and socio-economic status could be important. The IQ. The sex and handedness could play a role as well. For clinical neuropsychologists, still nowadays in 2023, we think that paper and pencil tests are still most relevant for neuropsychology, considering that many of our patients, yeah, they might have problems sitting behind a computer screen, work with the mouse, and understand the constructions from the computer. A test assistant, yeah, can much better communicate with the patient and offer paper and pencil tests and explain once more and whatever. So still paper and pencil test. And there's a big relevance of face-to-face contact for getting a first impression. Yeah? With a computer test, you miss this first clinical impression. With this face-to-face contact, you get an idea about whether a person is older or younger for his age, yeah? Whether he shows appropriate social behavior, right? He sits in a normal way, right? And not sits like this. You get an impression. By communicating with your client, right? You get an impression about his, whether he's paying attention, whether his speech normal, whether he concentrates, right? If you use a computerized test, you should realize that there should be equivalence between the paper and pencil test, which is classically used, and the online testing, right? I mean, the psychometric societies all over the world, also in Indonesia, who are interested in psychometrics of all the tests, they advocate that a test which is given online should measure exactly the same things as a paper and pencil test. And during COVID, a colleague from Makassar and me, Heni Gerda Pesau, we compared two face-to-face verbal tests and see whether there is equivalence between the paper and pencil way of administration and of computerized testing. And with the population that Heni Gerda was able to collect, mostly young people who were able to work with computers, we could establish that there was a very good equivalence, right? But we only could evaluate the equivalence for relatively young, well-educated people who are very familiar with using technical devices, the mouse and touch screen and whatever. Okay, here just a few examples of neuropsychological batteries that are present in the world. I mean, I will not discuss them, but they are available, right? And you can find in the literature and you can read a million things about all these tests. But basically, as I mentioned, you have this battery approach or more patient or referral question directed testing of people, assessment of people. So the individualized approach, for each individual you choose the test what you think based on your expertise is most relevant. So this assessment is more tailored, more suited for a specific client and for a specific research question. Okay, so what is a neuropsychologist generally measures? And here we wrote, or I found in the handbook of neuropsychology assessment, 10 cognitive domains, cognitive skills, which are commonly tested. And I will not go through all of them, but basically they're regarding attention, problem solving, executive function, language functions, memory, sensation, perception, visual spatial skills, right? This type of cognitive things are measured with neuropsychological tests. Okay, the neuropsychological assessment starts with observation of the patient, right? I already mentioned this briefly, right? But you can quickly scan them and say, okay, makes sense and I understand what's going on. Okay, sometimes it's helpful to get an idea about the patient's IQ, right? I mean, you will not give the same test for a professor from this first-class university as you would give maybe for people from the rural community who's just, keep an eye on the cattle, right? And this Wechsler intelligence scale, the WISE, has already subscales for verbal ability and performance, and it can be used for a rough measure of right and left hemisphere functioning. Okay. Besides general impression of intelligence, we go to more specific tests. And the first category of tests are the attention and concentration tests. You collect information by observing the client, but also, of course, by test scores. And the yellow marked tests, they will be included in the test battery which we proposed for Indonesia. So test scores for attention and concentration can be obtained via reaction time studies, via the so-called digit span as part of the WISE. Digit span measures short-term attentional memory. And we have, in case I ask you, can you repeat?
That's the test.
Can you repeat 5, 8, 2, 9, 6, 7, 4? But you should reverse the order, right? So the WISE backward, yeah? Yeah? You have to do, yes, she can, yeah, she's ready, yeah. Chiara, yeah? But in reverse order, so that's what I mean by backward, yeah? No, I don't want to make her embarrassed. The Bourdon test, I'll show an example. Maybe some of you know the Bourdon test, so it's... We have the Stroop test, I'll show you an example. And we have the Twill making test for divided attention. So please see on my list of attention that I make a distinction between attentional capacity. What is your attentional buffer? How many items you can contain in your short-term memory or working memory, we say nowadays. Sustained attention, how long can you keep concentrated on a certain task? Sustained. Selective attention means that you have to switch your attention from this to this. Select now this, now this, now this, now this. Well, that's an example of divided attention. Well, this is this digit span test, the forward and backward. I just, give an example to Chiara. The Bourdon test, right? I mean, you have this list of dots, 3, 4, or 5, and you have to cross. You have to cross the ones with the 4 dots and not the one with 3 or 5 dots, and you should do it as quickly as possible. You should go from... No, that was not very smart to do. Okay, you should go from the left to the right, and the psychologist, thank you, and the psychologist, this is the pointer. Okay, thank you. And the psychologist should measure the time for each row, right? So there are 30 rows, and it takes about 13 seconds for most people, something like that. But it regards specifically whether your speed of working and the number of errors is the same in every line. If people are not able to concentrate very long, right, they will start making more... I didn't do anything. Making more errors, or their time to complete a line will be prolonged, right? People who can concentrate, they work steady, right? So it's a task for sustained attention. Maybe you're familiar with the Stroop, a very old test. Familiar? Yeah, I see many. Okay, great. I don't have to explain this. Yeah? And specifically, the difference in time between this condition, card number 3, and card number 2, is the most dependent is the most crucial dependent variable, yeah? As well as the number of mistakes you make over here. The trill making test, the most simple form is trill making A. You have to go from 1, 2, 3, 4. The trill making B is a little bit more interesting and complicated, in which you have a mixture of digit and letters. So you have to go from 1 to A, and then from A you have to go to 2, and then to B, and then to 3, and then to C. So you have to be flexible, you have to switch, you have to memorize. Okay, I just finished B, 3, after B comes C, right? So there's a memory component in, and this task is very sensitive for aging and for education. Now I jump to the memory tests, right? There are quite a number of, but I will concentrate on the yellow ones, the so-called 15-word test. I like it a lot, because it measures different aspects of memory as well as learning. 15 words are presented. You have to repeat them. The same 15 words are presented again, and again, and again, and again. You can see the number of items that people remember after each time, so you can get an idea or the amount of learning. Yeah? In the beginning they have 4 correct, at the end they have 12 correct. So improvement is 8. Right? Next to that, you all know about the difference between immediate recall and delayed recall. 20 minutes after this test is done, right? You ask, and then in the meantime you give some other test, and then again, after 20 minutes you ask, please recall the words that you were learned 20 minutes ago. Oh God, yeah. So delayed recall. In any type of list of words that you remember, you can establish a primacy effect and a recency effect. You remember primacy and recency effects? Primacy effect means that if I give you 15 words to remember, the first words in the list you remember more easily, and the same with the last few words, right? The primacy effect. Yeah? You can see whether this primacy and recency effect is present in your patients, yes or no? Okay, and the test that we have in our Indonesian, the grace auditory verbal learning test. We have not one type of memory. We don't have one type of memory. We have different types of memories. Memory for verbal things, for language type of things, verbal things, for auditory presented words, is different from our memory for visual information, and especially for visual spatial information. So we also have a memory test for visual spatial information. And here you see, 15 words, right? And these are 5 times repeated. And sometimes, or often, you should give a list too to see whether there's interference between the first and the second list. I mean, I will not talk about details, but anyway. Language test. Well, just this slide about 2 areas in the brain which are involved in different types of aspects of memory. Broca's area in the prefrontal cortex, responsible for the production of words, as you all know. And Wernicke's area in the temporal lobe, more a bit posterior. That area is relevant for understanding language. Right? Okay, I see many people say, yes, we know this. So we have two different language tests, right? One is the, we have three types. Boston naming test, right? This is not the Boston naming test, but you got visual pictures and you should say, you should name, you give the name of the object that is visually presented. And it goes for, there are 60 items and you go from very simple to very complicated items. And then there is another word production task regards Tara, how many words you can produce with the letter, we start with the letter T in 1 minute. One. Okay, yeah? Okay. It regards that you should use your lexicon, your words. You have to look in your lexicon, but all these words which start with the letter K, for example, I mean, they come from different semantic categories. So you would be flexible. You should be creative. You should use searching for words. I mean, it's a cognitive skill, right? So we also with Heli Gerda from Makassar, we were investigating whether which letters we should use for Indonesia. Yeah? And we found out that the words starting with the letter K, T and S, that they are relatively well representative for Bahasa Indonesia. So two word production tests, right? One measures something like cognitive flexibility, yeah? Able to search for words in your lexicon, and you should switch from one category to another, yeah? And recognizing these, the names, and remembering the names of these pictures. So two word production tasks and a so-called language comprehension task. And for that we choose the token test. The token test is that people should understand the instruction you gave them. And of course it starts very simple, right? Touch the small red circle. Okay. Touch the small green square. Touch the token above the large blue circle. Get a bit more difficult, right? And so you can endlessly increase the difficulty. A test regarding word comprehension. Okay, some examples. Verbal fluency task I already mentioned, and we have investigated the equivalence of this test online versus. And these are two Indonesian scholars who proposed the T, the S and the K. Hendrawan and Hatta. Okay, that basically the yellow things, and I will come back to them, are in our Indonesian neuropsychological test battery. These tests were advised by us by clinicians, by people who work daily with all type of neuropsychological patients. These 10 tests, they should cover the most important cognitive domain with in the most prevalent neuropsychological patients. So some of the issues were not in our battery. Now, I want to emphasize the need for normative data in Indonesia. You all know the necessary of important you all know the relevance of having normative data. And it is my opinion that each country and culture deserves his own recently collected normative scores from a representative normative group for a fair neuropsychological assessment, allowing to compare the test results of a client with a group that mimics the client's demographic factors as close as possible. A very reasonable statement. Right? For a fair assessment, you need data which are collected in Indonesia, yeah? And not in the United States 50 years ago. I mean, yeah, no. Indonesia still normative scores collected many years ago in a completely different culture. With completely different values, with completely different healthcare system, with a different educational system. And not, you should not use data which are collected in another language. Right? Or not in the clients, or data which are not collected in the patient's favorite, preferred language. In a Western, white, Christian, Jewish culture with a different educational system, blah, 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 health situation and healthcare system. Sometimes normative scores from the 50s, 60s are still used in Indonesia. Another issue is that I discovered that some publishers, they forbid to use normative scores collected in Indonesia. My colleague she got a PhD in Nijmegen, so I know Christiana Suwartono very well. She collected data from 1,400 subjects for the whole WISE. Right? She does not dare to publish them because she's afraid that she gets punished by the owner of the WISE. Huh? I mean, what a job she did, right? 1,400 subjects. But Indonesian scholars, Indonesian psychologists cannot use her normative scores. I think it's a bloody shame. The outcomes of these cognitive tests will not be a surprise. They show very large effects of age, education, and sometimes of sex. The brains of girls and boys are not very different. They're the same. 99.5% are the same. Boys have a bigger head, so they should be filled with more brain, right? Yeah? But, yeah? Yeah? The difference are, what are the difference between the brain of boys and girls? Huh? First of all, very small, right? Oh, yeah? Maybe the connection between the two hemispheres is a little bit thicker in girls. Girls, they think that they are better in multitasking, right? Yeah, the two brains communicate a little bit better. Yeah, many girls say that. Well, I can talk, I can drive, I can use my phone. Yeah, yeah, yeah. But if you investigate in a serious way, yeah, in a controlled way, yeah, not just talking, but to cognitive tasks, and there is not a single difference between boys and girls. But generally I don't tell that, I just leave the girls and say, well, you are better at multitasking. Yeah? And it means that they talk all the time, right? That's, yeah? Yeah, you recognize what I, yeah?
I would say yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Therefore, considering that these cognitive tests are sensitive for age and education, maybe we need different normative scores for better educated people and not good educated, or people from different age categories. Okay, we are aware of that. So our research in Indonesia, we came up with a proposal for the Indonesian neuropsychological test battery, and we call it INTB. 10 tests administered in Bahasa Indonesia. That's already, for some people, a little bit of a problem. I come back to that in a minute. We collected, or it's our plan, or we're busy, normative data in and outside Java, at least. Yeah. We made a consortium consisting of Sugiyah, Atmajaya, Jakarta, Vidya Mandala Catholic University in Surabaya, and with these 3 universities we collected 480 data from 480 subjects. And important is that all subjects did all tests. Next, we had this collaboration with Atmajaya Makassar, Udayana, and 17 August 45 University in East Kalimantan. Currently, well, I'm a little bit involved in helping Maranatha, so also these people agreed to collect 200 data sets in the Sundanese population. I want to be critical to our own work. So I'm aware that the data that we were collecting do not really represent the complete Indonesian population, which is of course extremely difficult considering the variety of people, maybe not so much in Java, but considering, you know, all these islands and all these different ethnic groups, and oh my God, yeah. Interesting, right? Yeah, very. So we have mainly urban population. Yeah? Many. If you should go out and find some people who want to participate in your testing, you need to assess a certain amount of people, right? Yeah? Most of the students, they go to family, neighbors, right? Yeah. So the result is that our subjects have a relatively high level of education, relatively young, yeah? And I mean, in this regards, the Java sample. We did the test administration in Bahasa. And for many Indonesians, Bahasa Indonesia is not the first language. It's a second language. Yeah? We are interested to figure out whether this has consequences for the test scores. Right? So once more, together with Heni Passau Gerda, we just published a paper in which you could see that some of the language tests that we used were sensitive for and dependent on whether people speak Bahasa Indonesia at home or not. Right? And we could publish it in a good international paper. Yeah? Okay, so in the journal Bilingualism, Language and Cognition. Right? Regarding ethnic groups, considering that we have data from Kalimantan and from Bali, we felt, well, let's just, quickly look whether there are some difference in these language tests. And we compared Balinese and Banjarese. Right? It's not a big paper, just a small paper. It was presented in a conference in the Semarang. And we could see clear differences between Balinese and Banjarese in the Bosting naming test, which could not be explained by difference in in spoken language, in age and education. We are a little bit uncomfortable with this result. I mean, you can interpret in two different ways. You can say, Balinese are stupid, right? Yeah? Or I don't believe, I cannot believe that. I mean, God created all men equal. I do not believe that there is a basic difference between the minds of different people all over the world. But it could be that some circumstances which we cannot control, which we do not know, might have caused this difference. Anyway, for a fair evaluation of Balinese people, right, perhaps we should adapt the normative scores for Balinese people. Yeah? Maybe, I don't know, it's an open question, right? But at least we want to know whether ethnic differences could be present in the test of our battery. Yeah? We better to know this than ignore it. Okay, our test battery. I already showed the yellow tagged test. Yeah? Basically, we have 5 executive function tests. Executive function tests regard how flexible is our brain, how flexible are we, right? How much can we learn from mistakes, how well we can inhibit our impulses. Our executive functions are localized in the prefrontal cortex, and that makes humans behave in a good way. We hope to be flexible, we can adapt to other situations, we can live in different circumstances, you can adapt yourself regarding social situations. Yeah? If I'm abroad, I can behave a little bit different in the United States than I should do in Indonesia. Yeah? You behave different if you talk to your grandfather than you talk to your friends, I hope. Yeah? All we do this because of our executive functions, because of our frontal cortex. Also regarding mental flexibility. In case you should find a solution. Let's give a stupid example, right? How did you came to the university? Motorcycle. Okay. You want to go home and you don't have gasoline anymore. It's completely empty. I'm sure that within 1 second you find a solution. Yeah? How to solve the problem? Easy, right? Yeah? If you do not have a frontal cortex, yeah, you keep on, yeah, you keep on hitting it, yeah? And in case these doors would be locked, right? Yeah. Oh, we want to get out, right? And then you can endlessly, yeah? But we can find quickly a solution, right? Yeah. Yeah. Maybe you can escape through the window, or maybe that door is open, or use our telephone, yeah? Well, we find a solution, right? Because we have a frontal cortex. Yeah? And if one situation is not successful, yeah, we learn quickly that endlessly to kick against the door and being angry and slamming the door is not useful. Anyway, we have 5 executive function tests in our test battery. Yeah? The 5-point test regards creativity. Yeah? You have to make as much as possible unique figures. Yeah? We have the digital span backward, digital sequence, this to generate words starting with the letter S, T and K, and we have the stroke test. And we submitted the manuscript regarding the psychometric properties based on our 800 subjects, the data collected in Indonesia. We have 3 learning and memory tests, this overlap, it's common. We have, yeah, I explained to you about the 15 words test and the figural reproduction task. A visual spatial task, you see this figure, yeah? Pay attention to it, 5 seconds, and then you have to copy this figure from memory. We have language tests, I explained them already, yeah? 2 word production tasks, the verbal fluency task, we have the Boston name, and we have the token test for word comprehension. And we have attention task, and the Bourdon, sustain task, the twill making task, digit span, and the Stroop as well. Yeah? So these are the tests in our battery. I should come to an end. Let me see. Okay, and now I promise you that we are developing new tools to facilitate neuropsychological assessment in Indonesia. We were inspired by neuropsychologists from the University of Amsterdam, and they developed a neuropsychological online tool that compares a client scores with fine-tuned reference scores regarding the demographics stored in a dynamic database. Instead of going to the manual of a test, yeah, you submit the scores of your client to this online platform, and you should give the demographic characteristics of your client. The database of this online platform search in the database for data from a reference group as close as possible to the demographics of your client. So we're an online platform and a dynamic database. What we want is that if you submit the data of your client, you like to keep the data from your client and we put it in the database. Right? In case a neuropsychologist in East Timor collecting data from some healthy people, maybe patients, that the patients are well defined, we would like to have this data and put it in our database. The database may grow. Yeah? And the more data are entered, the better it becomes. We can make more fine-tuned normative scores. That's our plan and that's our idea. So we have a dynamic database and a online platform. And my PhD, Shinta from Surya, from computer science, she published this last year. Okay, the dynamic database incorporates various neuropsychological test scores from a large group of healthy subjects. The dynamic database contains data from 840 healthy subjects. Yeah? It should grow by researchers donating data, right? Nope. Okay. So in case somebody of you has collected data from Stroop test, and you know very well the demographics, we're happy to receive them. We include them in our database. We want to have data from patients as well, for different type of categories of patients. Because of COVID, we could not collect data in patients. Project is a little bit on hold. We want to use data from users of the test from all over Indonesia, yeah? And also from remote areas. We think that this approach is much better than the approach followed by the classical publishing houses who own the test, right? Which you should pay for getting access to the normative scores. Our online platform allows neuropsychologists and clinicians in Indonesia to develop a reference group based on the demographic characteristics resembling the demographic characteristics of the client and patient as close as possible, allowing them to interpret the client's scores efficiently and adequately, both based on the most appropriate available data from the desired reference group. Okay. I want to show quickly that the data that we collect are sensitive for age and education facts. This is a paper from Agustino Sulastri years ago in the collaboration with Belanda people. And here shows the results of the Boston naming test and the effect of age. You see that the young people do 52, 54, and later on, the 45, there's a small decrease. Yeah? And here you see other characteristics. And here you see the effects of age, of education. Yeah? University graduates do better than people with only high school. Yeah? So it's important to maybe to adapt the reference scores for age and education, and at least this is shown here for the Boston naming test. This is just, you know, to give you an idea how Shinta developed this online platform and database. I will not bother you too much, yeah? But at least it's also published. And here I show you for scores from the Boston naming test once more regarding the relevance of having an appropriate reference group. Let's take an example of a woman who has a scores of 48 correct items from the 60. Right? We compare the scores of this woman with all data in the database. In those days we had 492. Yeah? And a score of 48 was, compared to all data in the database, was, well, 1.5 Z-score below the mean. Not extremely bad, but a little bit bad. If we compare this woman with the group that had 12 years education, you could see that the Z-score is even lower, right? -2, which means that she's at the border of having some problems, right, regarding this. Maybe they need help. Something is wrong in her verbal production capacity. If we compare her scores with the persons who only have 6 years of education, that makes a hell of a difference. Suddenly your scores is above 1, right? And if we compare the scores of lady with people older than 60 years, you see the scores is exactly normal. So this slide illustrates the relevance of having corrections for age and education for the data of the Boston naming test. This is another example of published of our publication. Here you see the level of education, 6 years, 79, 17 plus, and you see that the scores of this test heavily depend on years of education. What about age? Right? You see that basically there are not much difference in this test scores for people between 16 and 50 to 59, but after you become over 60, there's a quick deterioration. On the other hand, please notice that the standard error is very large, so maybe not reliable yet. We need more data from older people to make sure what's going on. But once more, sensitivity for age and education. This is another test. This is the twill making test, right? Also, here you see the different levels of education, and this is age. So you see that different, you see age effect as well as that you see education effects for the twill making test. This is basically the most important thing we have done until now. That is, we published in an open access journal the normative data from all our 10 tests, right? They can be found and they are available. Okay, I come to my conclusions. Take home messages. And I want that you realize that neuropsychological assessment differs from neurological assessment. Right? And these tests can be used for healthy persons as well as for people with various type of brain diseases and brain damage. These tests can also be used for medical patients, right? Diabetes, yeah? HIV, post-COVID syndrome, name a few. Yeah? And for studying for scientific reasons, for studying brain behavior relationships. Brain images studies, all these expensive equipment, does not provide information about what the brain is able to do, and certainly not regarding cognition. I cannot see from a brain scan or from an EEG what are the cognitive problems that this person has. I can guess, yeah, based on knowledge, but cannot be certain. Even if people have a big lesion in Broca's area, some people can speak because 5% of the people have Broca's speech area on the right side of the brain. Neuropsychological assessment does. Indonesia lacks normative scores for the most commonly used neuropsychological test. Most commonly used, I'm referring to the whole world. I'm referring to tests which have been proven to be useful over the past, whatever, 50 years. I do not claim that our tests are very fancy. I just want to mention that these instruments that are in this Indonesian psychological test battery, that they are sufficiently reliable and that we are working on psychometric qualities. They can be used by you guys for, in case you want to do assessment, and we have normative scores, and we will do more work regarding normative scores, adapting for age education effects, language things, ethnicity, right? But normative scores based on 490 Javanese people are available. Well, our consortium started to collect normative data for Indonesia, for 10 tests, in 4 cognitive domains, in various parts of West Indonesia. Well, Makassar is not West Indonesia, but okay. And is currently investigating the role of demographic factors in order to see whether corrections for age, education, sex, spoken language, and ethnicity are imperative. The normative scores I just showed you are, I call them preliminary. Yeah? They are based, the data are collected in urban, well-educated, relatively young Javanese population. They are available. Yeah? Data from rural Balinese. I had a student, Arya Emmanuel, from Udayana. He compared, what was it? 75 people from rural areas and 75 people from urban areas in Bali. We could not find the difference between those two categories. Anyway, so data from rural, except in Bali, young, very young and old and less educated people are necessary to make our database stronger. Right? We do not have lots of data regarding people with only elementary school, and we do not have enough data regarding people over 60 years. Our dynamic database and online platform will be available soon and should allow to have more fine-tuned normative data for the reference group of your choice. Data from clinical populations will be collected to see that the test can be meaningfully administered in various clinical populations, and whether these tests discriminate between patients and healthy controls. Based on the experience of many clinicians around the world, they should. That's why we selected them. But we should prove that this is also the case in your country. We are not done as yet, and we need your help. In case you're interested to collaborate with us, and regarding the use of any of these tests, to use our e-Andy, to use our online dynamic database, or you want to help in collecting new data for minorities, in aged people, people living in rural areas, and less educated people, or in case you have data from cognitive tests which you would like to put in our database, we're happy to consider that. Then they might be available for more Indonesians via our online platform. Perhaps they can be incorporated in e-Andy. So please contact Dr. Agustina Sulastri from Sugia, or me, or your local aspiring member of our consortium. Perhaps Professor Bo would be interested to be intermediate between us and you guys, or online people. There might be many. So thank you for your interest and attention.
Okay, thank you, Professor, for the highly informative and inspiring presentation. Now we have gained a deeper understanding of neuropsychological assessment, or NPA. And after this, we will open a Q&A session. If there are any questions from the audience, please raise your hand and we will give the opportunity for you to ask Prof. Giles directly. Is there any questions?
Okay. Hi, my name is Kiara.
Hello, Kiara. Yeah. Everybody has a name tag here, right? Yeah.
Thank you so much for the presentation. It was very insightful. I have a couple of questions. You mentioned that there should be a collaboration between neurologists and neuropsychologists. In your opinion, how do you think the collaboration should be like? Maybe in what ways? And you also mentioned that neurological assessment also measured aspects of cognition, but you also mentioned that we need neuropsychological assessment to see what clients can still do or not. So I'm just wondering how neurologists assess cognitive aspects that make it differ from neuropsychological assessments.
The collaboration, you're asking about how do I see the collaboration between the neurologist and neuropsychologist. I see in many parts of the world that, let's call them neuropsychologists, are working in the hospital. They are working, they could be part of the team of neurologists. Neurologists, they can figure out, what is wrong in our nervous system, right? The psychologists can better interpret based on the test what the patient still can do or not. The neurologist is not able to do that very well. Moreover, psychologists are trained to deal with patients with their problems, right? I mean, you're a psychologist, you can help, you can advise, you can analyze the type of problems that people have, right? Mainly, for example, regarding to accept your new situation, right? Or give advice psychologist can advise how the life of a patient should be remodeled so that he or she is more happy. Right? Just as with any type of clinical problem, clinical psychological problem, psychologists can give advice, can give directions. Yeah? He or she can also talk with the patient, yeah, and give information regarding the prospects. I see that neurologists and neuropsychologists work together in a team, yeah, in a hospital. In the past we had in Belanda that the clinical psychologist was working in a hospital, but they had their own department. Now I see that clinical psychologists, they disappear from hospitals and neuropsychologists are moving in. Yeah? The neurologist can better talk to a neuropsychologist because a neuropsychologist know about the brain and brain diseases, right? Clinical psychologists know nothing, yeah, about the brain and about brain-related diseases. They're not trained in that. They know about anxiety, they know about HDD, they know about maybe depression, they know about obsessive-compulsive disorder, they know about dyslexia, no? But not about Parkinson's disease or about epilepsy or whatever. That should be the answer to your first question. The second one was? The neurologist, when he or she wants to know something about the cognition of a patient, then generally he asks, what's the day-to-day, or do you know where you are, or very simple tests, right? And then he gets a rough impression. But the client wants to know much more. The client wants to know whether I can go back to work, whether I can. What are the prospects? What should I do in order to deal with my problems? Okay? So the neuropsychologist has a different task than the neurologist. The neurologist does not know anything about cognition. The neurologist is trained about the nerves and how to test the intactness of the nervous system. Psychologists have clearly added value, for patients. People with brain damage. Next to that, as I tried to explain, these cognitive tests can be used for cognitive assessment, for job selection. The colleague at Sukhya Panata she's involved in selecting people who might become leaders in an organization. She says, well, perhaps executive functions should be added. Yeah? Not only intelligence, yeah? People who are flexible, people who are creative, right? People who can deal with not complete set of information. Yeah? People with good executive functions can do that. And we can take decisions based on not all information is available. We can still choose a way which we think is most important, most relevant for the purpose of our organization. So she proposes to use executive function tests for recruitment and job selection. Just an example how these executive function tests can be used for many different purposes and different types of people. Thanks, Chiara, for your question. In Italy, there are many girls who are called Chiara. It's a CH. Oh yeah. Very beautiful, popular name, Chiara.
Okay.
Other questions, please.
Okay, Prof. Shields. Here's the questions.
Fitri.
Okay, Prof. My name is Fitri. If you don't mind, I want to ask about a move beyond this topic about neurofeedback or biofeedback. I read several articles about alpha theta training in treating some psychiatric conditions. What do you think about it? Is it a promising tools that used by neuropsychologists in the hospital in address some to solve problems by neuropsychologists? What do you think about it?
The efficacy of various types of neurofeedback training for different diseases is a difficult issue. I cannot say that the specific training that you propose here, alpha theta training, is a good solution for any type of psychiatric disease. I should carefully consider available evidence based on very well designed, randomized control trials. The problem is with neurofeedback studies is that the control group is almost impossible to have a good control group. Because you cannot give, I mean, people will, even if you connect them with this EEG stuff or heart rate recording, and they are sitting there for every week, half an hour, try to control their heart rate. After a few minutes they gave up because it's completely impossible. Right? They figure out quickly that they are in the control group, that they don't learn anything. The expectations go down. You cannot, even a false feedback group is not a good control group. We do not have appropriate control groups for randomized control trials measuring the efficacy of any type of neurofeedback training. So that's the beginning. Maybe, I know that a lot of people are trying to make a business out of neurofeedback training. I don't know. I mean, we all have placebo effects, right? Yeah. So when people say, well, I have some good results. Yeah, I believe that. Yeah? Yeah. But whether it's really due to neurofeedback training, I'm a bit skeptical.
Okay. So the result that I read in the several articles remains unclear, right?
I didn't hear the last sentence.
So the result that I found in several articles about the neurofeedback training remains unclear for you.
I always, when I read neurofeedback literature, I see that there are two categories of people. The believers and non-believers. I mean, when you keep in mind that it's extremely difficult or maybe even impossible to have the perfect control group. Yeah? And it means that the positive effect of neurofeedback training can be due to factors we cannot know very well because our control group is not good. And I do not know the solution. I do not know how we can make a perfect control group. Okay. But some people get good results. Yeah? And in case, I mean, we have spent billions of research towards giving drugs to patients, right? And many of our patients are still cannot be treated with existing medication. Right? So it's extremely good that people start or investigate or keep on investigating how we can look for non-medical treatments for people which deserve to be treated. There's so much suffering around the world with respect to all types of brain-related diseases and mental diseases. So we should try. And even if the efficacy is a little bit higher than placebo, we still should try and see for which patients, which treatment works best for which type of patients. Okay. By saying, can we use neurofeedback training for neuropsychiatric patients? Oh, huh? Let's talk about maybe for some and for which ones, yeah, and what type of neurofeedback training, right? I mean, you mentioned alpha theta training, but there are many more possibilities. Moreover, yeah, you can get neurofeedback from here, from here, from here, from here, from here. Yeah? What do you want to change? Yeah? Some people say, well, we do first a QEEG. Yeah? We do a quantified EEG with topographical mapping and see which parts of the brain show a different pattern. Yeah? That maybe is a first step to see which type of training and where this specific patient should be treated. Yeah? That may be already helpful. Yeah? But in general saying, yeah, is it useful to use neurofeedback training for psychiatric patients? I would say no, but perhaps, yeah, yeah, yeah. And then we should start thinking under which conditions, what can we do to improve the situation? Yeah? Is a QEEG really helpful? Yeah? Maybe what is the history of a patient? Has he already had 20 years antidepressant drugs? Yeah? Is the brain still able to be plastic? Can we still change some things in the brain after 20 years of giving Prozac, yeah, or yeah, any type of SSRI? I don't know. So many questions still to be answered.
Okay, thank you, Professor, for your opinion.
Okay, we will give the opportunity for the online audience. Bu Supra, maybe can we give? Bu Supra can give. Masih mute Bu Supra. Bu Supra mic-nya Mas. Ya.
Yeah. Thank you, Sasha. Professor Kiros, I really enjoy your presentation. And my name is Supra. I'm from this university, Faculty of Psychology. I want to share with you some information regarding the neuropsychological assessment and also a question for you. Firstly, several years ago when our faculty started to develop the lab for neuropsychological thing, that's for research and education, we learned that a lot of scholars think only that everything related to psychology, neuropsychology is very expensive, difficult and expensive, which is not always true, because people think that neuropsychology is expensive because we deal with fancy type of tools like EEG, fMRI, and so on that you presented before. When I start to talk about whole state Triton, Luria, Nebraska, NEPSI 1 and 2, trail making test, and then Roy Ostery test, they say that, well, that is not neuropsychological test. It's psychological test. So thanks to you that we in front of a lot of individual today, you talk about this, that neuropsychological assessment is not only EEG and fMRI. It's not only experimental, but also like classical sometimes and individual type of tests. So that thing that I want to thank you very deeply to you. And secondly, I also want to share with you that doing the collecting the normative data for the Indonesian battery neuropsychological test is very possible. Because the experience of our faculty, we developed the cognitive test, which include in there some neuropsychological aspect. We collected like 5,000 individuals, 5 to 18 years old. But this is very expensive and under philanthropic donors. So we could experience that. And thirdly, that is my question that you just mentioned, for example, using the QEEG. What I learned from colleague from neurologists, you use EEG to assess the brainwave. For example, with the ADHD individual, you might see the high beta waves. Then you might want to switch the beta wave into the alpha waves. The way we train our brain is using the QEEG. And I saw the apparatus, I saw the way they treated some patients, and they might want to have 15 times of QEEG. What do you think about that, Professor Giwas? Thank you so much.
Yeah, well, I mean, I agree. I do not agree with the people who say that the psychological tests do not say anything about our brains. I mean, everything what people do comes from our brains, right? I only think that, let's say, the brain is an important, or the most important thing that we have, which determines our behavior. So basically any psychological test which is measuring cognition gives information about the functioning of our brain. Right? That's my answer to those people. Well, and I do not like a semantic discussion. Oh, this is psychology, or this is neuropsychology. I mean, it's almost pointless, right? Yeah? These cognitive tests, they say something about your brain functioning. Dot. Huh? It cannot be, nobody can disagree with that unless they are naive and they don't know anything about how behavior is caused. I mean, these tests, doing these type of tests and using these neuropsychological cognitive tests, yeah, that's neuropsychology. And they are, come on, they're not expensive. I mean, come on, if you, I don't know, I mean, the people who are part of our consortium, you know, they get them for production costs, right? Only thing that we hope that they do is that they will collaborate with us and that the data they will collect, they will be put in our database. We think that a growing database is extremely helpful for creating better normative scores. I don't know what exactly the second question was, Supra. Microphone.
Yes, my second question is about collecting data for your Indonesian neurological battery test is very possible because in our faculty we collected almost 5,000 sample for the cognitive test, what is called as AGT. So it's very possible. That's
Okay.
my second question, Prof.
That's not a question, that's a suggestion for collaboration, right? Yeah? Yeah? Or we can discuss whether,
Yeah.
how appropriate it is and what is the quality of these tests, yeah? I mean, we should discuss together, and yeah, I'm very much looking forward to see what can be done and how useful it is for you, for this university, and for us, for the members of the consortium. Yeah? So we should talk together and longer and whatever. Thank you.
And my last question is about QEEG, Prof.
Yeah. Please, can you shortly repeat?
Yeah, I experienced using QEEG with with neurologist friends for those patients with strokes and so on. And they say that we might need to use the QEEG for like 15 times because QEEG is more towards brain training. So EEG is for the assessment and QEEG is for the training of our brain. What do you think about it? Thank you.
I mean, QEEG is a quantified EEG with electrodes all over the brain, and it does give you information which parts of the brain show a deviating pattern, right? Which parts of the brain show a abnormal EEG rhythm, right? So in case you have localized in any type of patient, it could be aphasia, but it could also be a person with HDD or ADD. I don't, it doesn't matter. But it gives a QEEG, it gives information which part of the brain shows a deviating EEG signal. Based on that information, you can choose the type of brain training, neurofeedback training, that you think is most appropriate for this student, based on what you have found with QEEG. Right? So QEEG is the basis for, starting point for good or reasonable neurofeedback training. Yeah? I do not see what a normal EEG is doing for people with aphasia. It does not give any relevant information, I believe. A EEG is an excellent tool, a normal EEG is an excellent tool for two types of research or for diagnosis. The diagnosis of epilepsy, right? You need an EEG for that, or nowadays a reliable video recording for a patient having a seizure. That is also, could be in some cases already good. But an EEG is in most cases necessary to confirm a diagnosis of epilepsy. The second reason why an EEG is extremely useful is for sleep research, right? And perhaps for attentional processes. The other thing why you can use an EEG for is not for clinical work, but for research purposes. And then most of the time we use event-related potentials, right? Yeah? But they have been used for, say, 60 years. And the P300, there are maybe 20,000 papers on the P300. And if I review them, which is impossible to do, I do not think that we learn a lot from it. But at least it's one of the ways to get access to the dynamics of cognitive processes in our brain. We can study processes on a millisecond basis, right? And that's important for cognitive research. So evoked potentials, yes, they are still widely used all over the world. And different paradigms, not only the horrible P300, but we have, enormous amount of event-related potentials. Yeah? And we just have to come up with clever experimental designs to figure out, what is going on during certain cognitive processes, which we can nicely steer. We can make sure that this cognitive process is going on that specific moment, and then we can, do all type of EEG analysis. What nowadays also is getting more and more important is that we not longer look at time frequency characteristics or the evoked potential at a specific location. Our picture of the brain has been changed the last couple of years when everybody talks who's doing brain research is talking about networks. Right? The brain is not, structure here, structure here. No, it's an integrated system with many different networks, right? So we do need statistical method for, or mathematical method for network analysis. Yeah? That's the future also of cognitive psychology. Unfortunately, we cannot go inside these brains. Yeah? We can only do depth recording in patients who should be prepared for epilepsy surgery, and in people who have brain tumors. Then it's allowed to put recording electrodes in the brain of patients. When we can collaborate with neurologists, right, who are doing neurosurgery, right, they implant electrodes and the patients want to volunteer. Yeah? We can do advanced EEG work regarding cognitive processes, yeah, in brains of people who have electrodes implanted. If we cannot do that, we stick to animal work. Yeah? We can implant electrodes in animals' brains, right? In rat brains. Yeah? Sorry, I got enthusiastic.
Okay.
Thank you so
Thanks,
much.
Prof.
Thanks, Supra.
Thank you, Bu Supra, for the questions and the suggestion for research collaboration with Prof. Chills. Okay, for the last questions, I will give the opportunity for Amrila. You can ask the questions.
Okay, thank you for the opportunity. It's a really insightful presentation, Prof. Gills. But it's really, my question is related with also EEG. This quarter first, honestly, I have no experience in EEG research, but I know about EEG. We know that the output of EEG is a brainwave, right? But my question is, I know it's real basic, but I really want to know that what does exactly EEG used for, and then is it effective to assess human brain or not? If it is, how far EEG can assess human brain? Thank you.
I mean, human beings are curious, right? I mean, otherwise we would not doing so well over all these million years. I mean, we have the human species because of the curiosity and the learning capacity and the fact that they can adapt themselves to different circumstances has made us the way we are. I believe that people are curious and interesting to figure out things. How to get access to an organ which we believe is important for everything. I mean, 5,000 years ago we had no idea that the brain was relevant. Yeah? Because that makes sense. The heart was relevant, right? Yeah? People could feel their heart, right? And if you remove the heart, right? Yeah? Which was done by the Indians in Mexico, right? You know, they sacrificed people and the heart was removed. People were dead. So the heart was the most important organ. Maybe about 2,000 years ago, the old Greek came to the conclusion that perhaps the brain is more important. But how to get access to the brain? Right? How to get access? Yeah? If you get it out, yeah? People are dead. The brain is dead. Right? What to do is, if you put the brain and put it there, yeah? You can cut, right? That's what anatomists did. Yeah? Oh, they say, oh, it's interesting structures, right? Oh, I see this, I see that, right? But how to get access to a living brain, right? And a smart guy, yeah, maybe in Krakow, Poland, right? He put two electrodes, yeah? And he measured something. And he discovered that if people close their eyes, the signal changed a bit. What? So there's a relationship between what I see in this noisy EEG and eyes open, eye closed. Right? This type of pioneering work sounds very stupid, yeah, but it's very simple, but all important things were discovered by something unimportant. Yeah? Created curiosity towards our brain. Yeah? EEG is one of the few methods in which you can measure something, We do not know very well what we measure, except electricity. EEG was only tools which we had available for studying in living organisms. And yes, there are relationships between EEG and behavior, and we discovered them. And yes, based on what the EEG shows us, we can predict things to a certain extent. The EEG is still a very useful apparatus to get access to the human brain. The EEG measures mainly the signal from the surface of the EEG, of the surface of the brain. Right? EEG does not say much about what goes on deeper. But the same as I said to the previous question, right? For that we need animal brains, right? We can put electrodes. And after that period we are not only recording, we are stimulating the brain and see what's going on. Right? Another way to learn something about the brain. Yeah? And we still stimulate the brain nowadays in different ways. Yeah? With nerve stimulation, with magnetic stimulation, with transcranial stimulation, with a battery, yeah? with ultrasonic sounds, with magnetic waves, we do million type of things because we are curious how our brain functions. Yeah? To understand brain behavior relationships, and hopefully this helps our patients who are suffering from brain-related diseases. That's my answer.
Okay, thank you from Prof. Gilles.
Amrila.
Yeah, Amrila.
Is that enough?
Great, thank you, Professor.
Okay, sadly we have reached the end of this public lecture with Prof. Gilles. And we want to express our gratitude to Prof. Gilles for his valuable time and the knowledge he has shared with us. Thank you also to all attendees. We hope this event has been beneficial for all of you and will enhance our understanding of neuropsychological assessment, or NPA. Once again, thank you for joining us. We wish you a fulfilling day ahead.
Thank you very much.
See you on another event. Bye. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Professor. By the way, Dr. Suprawimbati is our head of Mind, Brain, and Behavior Laboratory. And I suppose you come and join us for lunch, right, Mbak? Ra krungu kuwi Jehan.
Yeah. Surely I will.
Yay. Bu Yayi as the Kepala Suku is going to say something, right? Okay. Okay, go ahead. Oh, aku? Who will be going? Prof, you, as I've said many times, you're here too short, right? There's too many things. We really need to dig out from you. And we're not going to allow you leaving us without always having us in your mind. And so here is our head of department having something that will be gonna be yours now and forever. Go ahead.
From us to you.
Thank you.
Foto, di foto.
Foto.
Aku melong gaya.
Thank you. No.
It's something.
Empty. But the bag is nice, right? Ta-da! Oh, Indonesian head. This is the backside. Thank you for telling me. Otherwise, I would make a fool out of myself. Right? So I was secretly going to ask, oh, why, like this or like that. So this is the backside. Oh, oh. Yeah.
Yes, this one.
Rono benih iki piye? Ah.
Yeah, you should not see flesh, right? I mean, especially girls, right? Okay, so thank you very much. My wife will say, you know, just a bit. But thank you. The colors are beautiful. The combination of the head and the jacket.
Surten.
Surten. Yeah?
Surten.
Surten. No. I mean, yeah. I should change pens, right? Because this combination is not. I will. Yeah. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Oh, this is from psychology. Yeah. The whole team, which you know. Thank you. You will send them to Professor Bo. She will make sure that I get them as well, because it will, for my collection and souvenirs to your beautiful university.
And Professor will have to add that to Buyayi. This is from Belanda. With love.
Okay, or a small. Oh, you're welcome.
And we actually have a guest here. This is our dean from Bosoa, from Makassar. She's our alumni actually from this class. And Dr. Eva, I even forgot your last name. Eva Tanabe Tawaibe Labedekebiseki. Okay, Eva, this is what Professor Hills. Foto.
Eva.
I
She worked already.
I'm not a student anymore.
Was in Makassar, yeah. But now she tries to persuade me to come also to her university. I've been asking how many universities are there in Makassar, right? So, I mean, I can visit Atmajaya, Makassar. I collaborated with. Now her, but she told me that there are maybe more than 300 universities in Makassar. So I mean, I still have a long way to go when I visit them all. Terima kasih.
Terima kasih. Okay. And so, yeah. Terima kasih teman-teman sudah bersama-sama. Tadi yang bertanya siapa ya? Kiara. Hadiah. Wah Mbak Im kok tak ada, tak gorono. Kayaknya ada yang bertanya. Fitri? Oke. Oh, kamu dapat 2? Ya, tak wene lurunya. 2 cukup? Masih. Oke guys. Sudah ditutup tadi toh, tapi mari kita having a silent moment for a while. Semoga ilmu pengetahuan yang kita peroleh tidak menjadi sia-sia, dan semoga kita boleh menjadi bagian dari hidup ini yang memiliki hati dan keilmuan yang bermanfaat untuk diri dan orang-orang di sekitar kita. Silakan. Bismillah.
Alhamdulillahirabbil alamin.
Amin ya rabbal alamin. Sampun. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Oh, right. Kita foto bareng ya. Come. Oh iya. Piye ya foto? Hah? Oke. Hah? Oke. Ada baby. Oke. Loh, lagi? Kok kita umburine tok? Jadi kameranya kudu diapake.
Yang online off ya.
Saya
keluar
foto
ya.
Mbak foto saya. Katut ra sing online. Oh, sing online ra katut. Oke.
See you shortly.
See you Mbak, soon.
Soon.
Le foto piye? Elvin wis madhep sana. Flash disk. You're in the middle of us. Yayi. Senengane iki kok nganggo foto kuwi lho jen kaya dapotan. Astagfirullah. Wis begini tak pilih ke sing apa ya lho. Now then we can't see ourselves, right? Let's go ahead then. Ya, baiklah. Ya, oke. Oke. Smile.